Promotion and relegation in U.S. soccer has been a hot topic for years now. After finding and watching a number of soccer related YouTube videos, plus reading a number of books such as Soccernomics and Net Gains, I've also thought about if Pro Rel would work here in the US. I first came across soccer manager games almost 30 years ago, and the concept of Pro Rel was lost on me. It wasn't until it was introduced in the FIFA games that it suddenly clicked. I was a Chelsea fan before the Abramovich era, but after being able to play as a lower league team, I suddenly became fond of teams like Bristol Rovers, Southend United, and Portsmouth. Knowing that every game actually meant something made me start to lose interest in American leagues. There are no consequences for losing. There's always next year. Following the progress of teams like Luton Town and Sheffield Wednesday just brings an excitement you don't get in American sports leagues. When the MLS started, I hoped that Pro Rel would be implemented. It would have been awesome to see my local team, the Charleston Battery, get promoted up. But I understand why MLS went with the closed league, similar to the NFL. Not going bankrupt like the NASL was a priority. Now that the league has been around for 30 years, maybe it's time to take a look at Pro Rel in order to grow soccer here in the US. Currently, the league has 29 teams, with San Diego being the 30th to come. But just how big can the league get? 32 teams? 40 teams? 50 teams? Then what? How exactly do they plan to grow? There are 92 clubs in the English Football League. These teams are spread throughout England and Wales. Pro Rel allows these clubs the opportunity to move up and down the English football pyramid. Tifo Football has an excellent video on why there is no Pro Rel here. One of the biggest reasons is Pro Rel is meeting resistance is because of the investment by MLS owners. The owners here pretty much invest in sports to make money. Whether they actually care about the sport is questionable. But at the end of the day, they really care about the ROI of owning a team. This is across the board in all major US sports leagues, which is why private equity firms have now begun investing in teams. Soccer is seen as a new growth opportunity and is known for not implementing best business practices when running teams. Even Chelsea, my favorite team, was purchased by an American private equity firm. And also, just recently, a local business person in the Charlotte area bought a third tier Spanish club. Just to give you an idea of how far this reaches, here's a list of American investment I was able to find in European leagues. Tifo has another video that explains the value of US soccer clubs. The fact that MLS teams are as valuable as English Premier League teams is just crazy. Tifo's video gives a great explanation for the reason, but one of the reasons is because the MLS is set up differently. MLS owner groups don't actually own individual teams. They are basically shareholders in the entity called Major League Soccer. There are also shareholders in Soccer United Marketing, which is where the bulk of the revenue and value come from. Soccer United Marketing negotiates MLS's television and marketing interests, along with the commercial rights of the U.S. Soccer Federation and CONCACAF. Soccer United Marketing was worth about $2 billion and had revenue of $350 million in 2019. Now, hopefully you picked up on the fact that MLS owners have a very tight financial relationship with the U.S. Soccer Federation. For some of the MLS teams, 40% of their value is derived from this relationship. No way would they let Pro Rel upset that apple cart. That can hurt both the MLS and the U.S. Soccer Federation. A third issue with the typical Pro Rel suggestions is that the US is just too large. I've run across a few videos of people explaining how Pro Rel could be set up in existing leagues. This is the typical setup that I've seen. MLS is on top, USL Championship, second division, and then you have your third division. I can tell you now, there is no way this would ever work. Based on this setup, it is theoretically possible for all the MLS tier teams to end up being entirely on the West Coast. TV viewership is a major revenue source for sports. If you look at the ratings, games on the West Coast have much lower viewership. Close to 80% of the US population is located in the eastern part, the eastern and central time zones. That's close to 264 million people, with 66 million living in the western US or west or Pacific and mountain time zones. I know I rarely watch West Coast games because they end so late. My cousin in California told me they usually go out after a Monday night football game because it's still early there. So the odds of Eastern US soccer fans watching a Western only Tier 1 league are very low. However, there are a number of reasons why US soccer may want to implement Pro Rel. The first reason is the ownership structure of MLS. I recently watched a video from the Sports Analytic Conference that was about the future of soccer data in North America. What I took from it was MLS wanted to own the data for all soccer players in the US. You have to remember, MLS owns all the teams and all the players in MLS, and these players give up their FIFA rights to be in the MLS. On a related note, recently the Saudi Public Investment Fund bought the PGA through their Live Golf League. The fact that the Saudis actually bought a sports league was shocking around the sports world. Given their investment in soccer, there have been a lot of concerns raised. The Premier League has seen a number of players go to the Saudi Pro League because they are being offered life-changing money. This is also why a number of golfers joined the Live Golf Tour. There were discussions about whether the Saudis could buy one of the top European soccer leagues. That's pretty much out of the question, as UEFA has rules about owners having multiple teams in UEFA competitions. But the Saudis could actually buy MLS. If you think about it, the MLS is more like the PGA than NFL in structure. David Tepper paid $325 million for the Charlotte FC franchise. Just to give you some context, the Washington Commanders sold for $6 billion. Michael Jordan sold a majority stake in the Charlotte Hornets for $3 billion. Clear Lake bought Chelsea for $4.2 billion. There are currently 29 teams in MLS, with another recently being awarded San Diego. If the PIF offered to buy the MLS for 90 to 120 billion, do you think they would sell? With each owner and owner group getting between $3 to $4 billion, the PIF is working with $600 billion. The US is the biggest sports market in the world, and soccer is rapidly growing. 4 of the top 10 leagues are located here. The US leagues make up 3 of the top 4, with Indian Premier League, which is cricket, coming in second. The Saudis couldn't buy another top 10 soccer league because they have to deal with each team individually. That's not the case with MLS. And there's an even bigger caveat. The MLS is a closed league. There is no promotion relegation. Now, we've seen owners in other U.S. leagues move teams when they don't get their way. The cities they move to sell their souls in order to please them. One thing we know, U.S. sports team owners are ultimately concerned about ROI. Temper would be able to 10x his investment if his payout was $3 to $4 billion, and he's on the low end. David Beckham paid $25 million for Inter Miami in his deal with joining the MLS. A $3 to $4 billion payout will be quite the come up. The ramifications from this to U.S. soccer would be huge. This would mean that a foreign country will literally control the growth of soccer here in the U.S. Personally, I feel if the Saudis figure out they could buy MLS, it's as good as sold. The second reason Pro Rel should be implemented is the hit show Welcome to Wrexham. Wrexham Mania has taken over the world. I recently heard that because of the success of the show, and of Wrexham in general, the club had revenue of close to 20 million in the 2022-23 season. Wrexham was just promoted to the fourth tier English soccer. You have to go up to the championship, which is the second tier, to find teams that had as much revenue as them. Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds' decision to buy a Welsh football club has captured the attention of the entire soccer world. Now, the only reason everyone loves this story is because Rob and Ryan wanted to get Wrexham promoted back to the EFL out of the non-league. You know we love a great underdog story here in the US, but nothing like that can happen here because we don't have Pro Rel, which is making a lot more soccer fans wonder why we don't. Also, local soccer fans would be more likely to know who Paul Mullen is than their local club's number one striker, which means Wrexham is better known than the local soccer club. The success of Wrexham is going to have a lot more people pushing to get Pro Rel implemented here. The third reason I have for implementing Pro Rel in U.S. soccer is domestic investment. American investors are purchasing teams in foreign leagues because of the upside, especially if the team isn't already in the top league of their chosen country. MLS franchises are becoming too expensive with the diminishing upside. MLS can only grow so much in its current state, but buying a third tier Spanish club, that's a team you can theoretically grow to becoming a European champion. By having Pro Rel here, those investors will purchase teams here and help spur the growth of the sport. Domestic investment would help solve one of the big problems that we have here. Soccer is currently a pay-to-play sport. It's all about profit, from the youth all the way up to MLS. HITC Sevens has an excellent video talking about this. As far as I could tell, there is no professional soccer team in England that charges you to join their academies. In some cases, they even pay travel expenses and pay a stipend similar to an apprenticeship. There have been clubs here like Kingston Stockade, which have been providing a path for non-pay-to-play youth teams. Most MLS club academies are also not pay-to-play. But soccer is really a local sport. By investing locally, it helps grow the sport in the community. If run like other non-US federations, pay-to-play could go away as youth would be invited to join team organizations. Local investment could offset academy expenses and provide a pathway for youth that have been priced out of participating. Something else to think about is Lionel Messi, regarded by a lot of people as the greatest soccer player ever. He's only 5'6", which means there are more people with a body type that is suitable for soccer than for sports such as American football and basketball, where size is important. Also, if pay-to-play goes away, that makes it significantly cheaper for youth to play soccer than any of the other major sports here like football or basketball. Across the rest of the world, soccer is considered a working class sport and seen as a path to wealth. If the US has a pyramid system where teams are investing in youth, that minimizes household investment and provides lucrative pay at the professional level. With this going on, parents would certainly push their kids towards soccer more. This would also open up investment in soccer-related industries, things such as construction, marketing, technology, media, and sports medicine. More local teams could also help build rivalries, which would help increase interest in the sport and help in the promotion of the sport through media. The final reason I have for implementing Pro Rel is it helps grow the sport. Whenever you listen to reasons of why there is big investment in soccer teams, you usually hear about Manchester United and their revenue. Man U is the holy grail of club ownership, the most popular and biggest revenue generating club not owned by fans in the world. But what these starry-eyed investment owners miss is why Man U is at the summit of world football. When the Premier League broke away from the EFL, Liverpool was arguably the most popular English club in the world. Man U began their dominance right as the Premier League began to be broadcast on TV around the world. In the 30 plus years of the Premier League, Man U has won over 30 trophies, by far the most successful Premier League club. People love winners, so that bandwagon grew around the world. Man U's owner didn't set out to create the world's biggest club. That was a byproduct of their success and leveraging their brand. It's going to be hard to replicate that with just Moneyball, which seems to be the popular path. Also, soccer is not like the NFL, NBA, MLB, or NHL. Those closed leagues work because they're the top league in their sport. The NFL is especially hard to replicate because very few countries outside the US even have an American football league. If they do, the level of skill falls dramatically. MLS is competing against every other country in the world. That's a big mountain to climb with a limited league structure. But let's get real here for a moment. If you're buying a soccer club with making money being the primary motivator, you're putting yourself in a bad position. Rob and Ryan bought Wrexham because number one, they wanted to help the community of Wrexham. Number two, they wanted to improve the club and get them back into the EFL. And number three, build the club up to be self sustaining. If they made money, then great, but that wasn't the primary motivator. The passion these two have shown for Wrexham is unheard of here in the US. You don't see that from owners. The lesson is be more like Rob and Ryan and less like a typical US owner. So now the question is, how could ProRail possibly be implemented? USL President Jake Edwards hinted that the USL was looking at implementing some form of ProRail. I imagine they've hit quite a few roadblocks. The fellas over at Get In Football Podcast asked whether the MLS would benefit from having a rival. I think the USL with ProRail would be just that rival. I could see ProRail taking off and the MLS being forced to join. It would be hard to be a 30 to 32 team league competing against a 200 plus team pyramid that gets continued investment. But how could they do it? First, you have to break the relationship that the U.S. Soccer Federation has with MLS, or at least minimize it. Then you have to change how leagues and teams are formed in the U.S. and U.S. soccer. Here's what the current requirements are. Personally, I think this should be changed to something similar like in the EFL. Basically, you get your home and away kits, find a place to play, find players, decide on the level you're playing at, form a club committee, designate your team location, apply to a league, and pay the nominal associated fees. The initial fees are typically less than $5,000. That gets you into Tier 9, 10, or 11 of English football. Being able to set up member-owned clubs would also be a huge boon to team creation and growth in the pyramid. The requirements for market size should also go away. I feel we need to use something similar to current requirements for playing fields and stadiums. The English FA also has a guide for which I think we could adopt. If an owner or owner group wants to buy a team in one of the top four tiers, that's when their personal finances should come into play. Some type of financial play should be implemented also, though I don't like the idea of a salary cap. The MLS currently gets around this with the designated player rule. No salary cap, but having FFP will help teams keep their finances in order. Finally, there's an actual pyramid structure. As I said before, the US is too large. In the Premier League, one of the longest distances traveled is AFC Bournemouth to Newcastle United. This takes about 6.5 hours by bus. In contrast, in MLS, Vancouver to Miami is about a 6-hour non-stop flight. and this is across three time zones, which means if you leave Vancouver at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, you arrive at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 9 hours. Travel is one of the biggest expenses and the biggest time sink. Americans like to do things differently. For example, we have playoffs to determine our league champion. I think something radical is needed here also. My proposal is this: create two separate leagues, a Western League and an Eastern League. They will not play each other in the regular season at all. Very similar to how MLB was with the American and National Leagues. Also, I will have 18 teams in each top league for a total of 36 teams across the top tier. Each tier below would then have 18 teams also. So let's take the Eastern League, and the Western League would mirror it, would be its mirror in structure. So at the top, in tier one, you have 18 teams, and in tier two, you also have 18 teams. The league champion is whoever finished first in the league, but it would be nice to play the Western League to determine a MLS type cup winner. So East 1 plays East 2 in home and away matches. The winner then plays the West winner in home and away matches. 17th and 18th place teams are automatically relegated. In the second tier, first and second are automatically promoted, with 3 through 5 going into a playoffs along with number 16, the 16th team from tier 1. In tier 1, 17 and 18 are automatically relegated. Also in tier 2, the bottom 4 would be relegated. Now, once you go to tier 3s and 4, it changes. You'll notice that I've now split north and south to make it more regionalized. And each of these would have 18 teams also. So in tier 3, you have your champion, and 2 through 5 enter the promotion playoffs. 16 enters the promotion playoffs with tier 4. 17 and 18 are automatically relegated. In tier 4, the top 2 are promoted. 3 through 5 go into the playoffs. The bottom 4 are dropped. In each of the promotion playoffs, it will just be a draw out of a hat. You have home and away fixtures. Get out of the first round, you have home and away to determine who gets promoted. This proposed pyramid would have 108 teams in the top 4 tiers. So that means it would be 216 teams in both leagues in the top 4 tiers. Tier 5 and below would be non-league. In Tier 5, you could also split that and regionalize it on down from there. My suggestion is that you do 16 teams at that point because it's going to get much smaller teams with smaller budgets. Dividing the leagues this way could help cut travel costs and build local rivalries. You can kind of relate it to high school football where schools have their local rivalries. Shortened travel times will also allow fans to easily attend away games. This would help with match day revenue. Also, with this number of teams, the opportunity for investment is huge. In English soccer, it starts to become regionalized when you enter the non-league part of the pyramid. Here in the US, the National Premier Soccer League is regionalized and it has close to 100 teams in their league. Given the number of pro and semi pro teams we already have in the US, I think this proposed dual pyramid structure could easily be filled out. Personally, I think the possibility of a Grand Forks FC from North Dakota rising up the Western League to beat the likes of LA Galaxy, LAFC, Seattle Sounders, and Portland Timbers is pretty cool. Having this setup also opens up cup opportunities. For instance, U.S. Soccer could bow out of the newly formed Leagues Cup and build up the prestige of the U.S. Open Cup. They could also introduce new domestic cups such as a Western and an Eastern Cup. The English FA has over 700 teams that participate. With 216 league teams, the U.S. Open Cup could easily grow to 1,000 teams and become the largest soccer tournament in the world. The media and prestige from a cup that size would be well worth it. Also, the cup could easily grow to be second only to the FA Cup. Setting up the preliminary rounds similar to the FA Cup would allow the league teams to come in at later stages. This would also bring more storied matchups just like the FA Cup. A six-tier Hilton Head FC from Hilton Head, South Carolina, playing a second round proper match against Atlanta United would be similar to South End United playing Tottenham Hotspur and almost as newsworthy. Another benefit is that Eastern League teams could play Western League teams in the later stages of the U.S. Cup. This would add even more weight to being the cup winner. Additionally, with the 216 team league, this could help improve CONCACAF as a whole. By investing in so many teams, the doors will open for players from other countries in the federation. This large scouting network would surely scout the other CONCACAF leagues just by their proximity. It would be much cheaper to find a player in El Salvador instead of competing to find a jewel in Belgium or Mexico. Another thing I would suggest is a league mandate of data availability. This could also help force financial viability of teams. For instance, in Tier 1 of East and West, stadiums must be upgraded to provide match video and player data for all matches that will be shared throughout the top four tiers of both pyramids. This would be mandated for year one be mandated for year one for tier one once they start the pyramid. Year three, tier two would come under the same requirement. This data collection would be similar to what happens in the German Bundesliga. All raw data will be freely shared throughout the league pyramids. Eventually, tiers 3 and 4 would be included in this. Failure to have this in place by the start of the season could cause teams to forfeit their promotions, which we could put this under stadium promotion requirements. With the amount of investment and use of data, U.S. soccer could be to CONCACAF like England is to Europe. We would be the destination where the best comes in their prime instead of a retirement league. Interesting enough, USL actually plans to vote on the implementation of Pro Rel at their owners' meeting August 9th through 11th. This is just a vote to gauge the interest in implementation, but technically, they could start with the pyramid system in the 2024 season, which will start in about 7 months. Thanks to Becoming Elite for putting out the video with the information. Based on all this, if MLS doesn't want to be involved, USL could implement something like this without them. After some time to think about it, if USL gets it right, I'm willing to bet that within 1 year, MLS would beg to join. But by that time, it may be too late for them. With an established pyramid that has ProRel, I think investment would flow into USL quickly. Why would you pay $500 million to join MLS when you can invest $5 million in a USL club and get promoted to the top tier? But it gets deeper than that. If the USL implemented a plan similar to what I've laid out, the MLS would actually be competing against two leagues, two pyramid systems, an Eastern League and a Western League. What would make it worse is if Canada, our neighbors to the north, implemented a similar dual pyramid structure. See if Montreal, Toronto FC, and Vancouver Whitecaps FC could leave the MLS and rejoin their country's league system. So technically, the MLS could be competing against four pyramid systems if the Canadian teams remain in MLS. By the time the USL playoffs rolled around, MLS could be on their last legs. So let's say you're a US soccer fan. The MLS and USL playoffs are on at the same time. Would you watch the MLS where it's the normal knockout tournament where you get to be champion of the MLS? Or would you spend your weekend watching the USL Promotion Saturday and Championship Sunday where you have games spread throughout the day because it's now late fall and Eastern League games can be earlier in the day with the Western League games later in the day? A full weekend of soccer from early afternoon to late night for 4 weeks. The caveat being that you see playoffs with real stakes on the line, not just another trophy. As a side note, I have season tickets for Charlotte FC. If USL implemented this dual pyramid system, I'd happily give up those tickets and instead become a season ticket holder for Charlotte Independence. I'd much rather support a local club where every game means something. Financial stability is crucial in a pyramid system succeeding. By having two separate but kind of joined pyramid systems, this allows for a multi-club investment, similar to what Clear Lake Capital wants to do and what Manchester City's owner, City Football Group, already has. Maybe something like having a majority share on one team in the Eastern League and a minority share in a team in the Western League. This could help curb conflicting interests if the two teams meet in the US Open Cup or League Champions Cup between East and West top two teams. Given the amount of money that has already been invested in the MLS, I could see them fighting this and even involving the US Soccer Federation. This would be a big mistake in my opinion. MLS players have already given up their FIFA rights when they join the league. The U.S. Soccer Federation chooses the national team typically from players in international leagues and the MLS. USL could decide to break away and form a new U.S. Soccer Federation to manage the two pyramid systems. There is no consequence of FIFA not recognizing them because their players aren't typically picked for national team duties, and players already lose their rights by playing in MLS. With the U.S. hosting Copa America in 2024, the Club World Cup in 2025, and the World Cup in 2026, all eyes will be on here. No way FIFA disavows a growing league with a dual pyramid system in the largest sports market in the world. FIFA will have to accept the USL because by the time the World Cup rolls around, MLS probably won't exist. I want to emphasize that I keep saying a dual pyramid system. The US is too large for one pyramid, and once again, theoretically, all the teams in the top level could end up on the West Coast, which would effectively kill the league. Having two pyramids also makes expansion easier. If 20 new teams join the Eastern League, but two new teams join the Western League in the same year, the pyramids aren't affected by each other. Remember, 80% of the US population is on the eastern side, so it should be expected that the Eastern League pyramid would grow faster. The only thing that would matter is both pyramids having the same number of teams in the top four tiers, aka the league portion of the pyramids. One last thing. Having two pyramids could open the door to having an East and a West soccer national stadium. Over in England, it is the dream of players and fans to have a final match in Wembley. Whether it's a cup final, promotion final, or watching the national team, Wembley is iconic. We don't have anything like that in the US. Sure, we have revered stadiums like Lambeau Field or Yankee Stadium or Boston Garden, but when it comes to soccer, we have nothing. Establishing a national stadium for each coast would add to excitement, and I don't mean to designating an NFL stadium, something completely soccer specific and neutral. All cup and playoff finals could be played in these two venues along with national team matches. So, what do you think? Is this a viable plan? Leave your comments below and please share.